water.
We'll get you some water. Actually, Ken get you some water.
We got a pitcher, so.
Yeah, if you run low over here. We got chairs but no table. You gonna hit him with the hard stuff?
Yeah. We got the pictures finally. You and the llama. You gotta come clean.
Uh-oh. Me and a llama. Yeah, I'm on my way to the Cincinnati Zoo. There may be more pictures like that.
Oh, God. I understand they have some baby sheep.
Cradle robbing.
Oh, jeez. How old is Reebok now? 3?
3.5, yeah.
Jesus. Because I think the first time I interviewed you, Michelle was pregnant.
Oh,
I think
she's long unpregnant. Yeah.
Oh, golly.
Actually, they've gone directly to Cleveland. So we'll saw him in Chicago, see him in Cleveland. And now I get a break for 2 days.
For starters, and this kind of ties in with what the guy in Chicago was saying, but a lot of people still see you as a musician, but you're as much a technologist, if such a term exists, as you are a musician at this point.
I think technophile is a more accurate term. Sometimes I have to get somebody else to help me with the technological part of it, but for the most part, it's just the fact that I fear no machine, in a certain sense. I tend to pick and choose my technologies based on whatever my other goals are, my musical goals. So it's not so much me jumping immediately on some technological bandwagon. I have to clarify my direction. And there's some technologies, for instance, the internet, which have been popular and even trendy for a little while, but I only just recently got involved in that. The excuse being that we had some event, some multimedia event that we wanted to advertise to the world, I guess. So we put up a website to do that. Now that the site's up, people want it to stay there and to evolve into something else, and I'm trying to figure out what that is. But I went through a period this spring of learning about 3 or 4 different brand new systems, software and hardware things, mostly because of the projects that I'm involved in, not because I have a natural predilection to do things technological over the more organic. Mm-hmm. I think the evidence of that will be the fact that now I have pretty much just a band now, a stripped down band, and even though we depend on some technology, it's really just the playing, mm-hmm. which is a technology, isn't it?
It is, in and of itself.
Yeah.
For the layman, what is CD+? What can people look forward to on this disc?
There's been a problem for a couple years of getting computer data and audio data to coexist on the same disk in a way that allows the uneducated user or the unsophisticated user to transparently put it into a CD player or into a computer, not have to worry about things like blowing your speakers up or something. So they finally solved this problem. The people who own the CD standard, which is Philips and Sony, they figured out a way to put both kinds of data on a single disk and hide the computer data from a regular CD player so that you don't get that awful noise. The one detail they overlooked when they established the CD+ standard was that somebody else owned the name CD+. So they had announced this new standard, CD+, to the world, and then somebody poked their head up somewhere and said, oh, by the way, we own the name. So
Jesus.
It slowed up the establishment of the standard for some 6 to 8 weeks. But now that's all settled, and now CD+ discs will start appearing in record stores and computer stores. And the first one to appear will, in all likelihood, be the Individualist, which is a CD+ only disc. In other words, we're not doing 2 different discs for each retail market. We're doing one disc that'll service both of them. And we're charging essentially what you would charge for a regular CD, so that people will have no impediment to getting the disc and experiencing what CD Plus and especially what my idea of CD Plus is all about.
So it'll have video on it, and I know it has video from the last tour.
It has a little video editing suite in there. You can go in and do an edit of a 3-camera shoot from a live show that we taped last year. You also have interactive lyrics. You can call up a song and then a page of lyrics will come up and it'll follow along. It'll highlight the lyrics as they're being sung, but then you can also click on some of the lyrics and it'll take you to that part of the music. And then the most significant new content is kind of a graphical experience that goes with every piece of music that's on the album. So there's an hour's worth of sometimes interactive graphics, and often just kind of, it's more like watching a video, I guess, for each song. So there's an hour's worth of visual content, the little video switcher, and the interactive lyrics.
Is it going to be, this is the big question a lot of people have, along the lines of flow phaser, or will it be actual videos where there is photography and computer animation and shots of you?
Well, there'll be imagery in there, but as is my inclination, I am not often the subject of the imagery. It's more what the songs are about. And there are a variety of presentations. There is one actually that is based on flow phaser and Grokgazer. We figured out a way to integrate that into the authoring environment that we use. So there will be a little bit of flow phaser in there. There'll be something that is brand new that's called a new technology that we kind of springboarded off of QuickTime VR, which is in itself a new technology, but we have an even newer technology called Dave, which allows us to do a lot of things that look like digital video manipulations and get a lot of mileage out of images. Since this is principally a CD, in other words, the music is the pivotal part of it, and then the graphics are kind of married to the music. The music takes up most of the real estate on the disc. There's an hour's worth of music, so that only leaves us 100 or so megabytes, 120, 140 megabytes of data left. So it's difficult to make that last an hour. You know, most CD-ROMs that you get, they devote all of the real estate to graphics rather than sound. We're just the opposite way around, so we have to figure out tricks in order to make the visual part of it last longer.
And so people know Dave is not Bob's cousin, right?
Dave has no relationship to Bob.
Thank God.
This was, you know, when we started calling it Dave, this was our greatest fear here, was when people think it had something to do with Bob. We call it Dave because it was essentially programmed and developed by Dave Levine, my programming partner, and also because it stands for Digital Anamorphic Video Engine. So, but he thought that up, not me.
The last time you were here, we were tooling on Billy Idol. We were talking about people who are using the term interactive to describe themselves, and since then, there's been a huge explosion of people who are at least exploring the technology. People like Sarah McLachlan putting out discs where they seem to have, you know, the idea that interactive is good, but they just don't get the point, it seems, about what the content needs to be.
That's the biggest problem, is people's ideas of content have lagged far beyond the capabilities now available to them. Most artists, with the blessings of their record labels, are going to essentially fill up that extra area with biographical content or stuff that they've already generated, you know, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that project in particular. And that's just, it's kind of lazy, you know, it's a lazy man's approach to doing it, and also they make the assumption that the audience is willing to pay for this stuff, and so they charge more for the disc as well. Sarah McLachlan's disc is not even a whole record's worth of audio. It's about, you know, it's like an EP. It's half a disc's worth of audio, and then a bunch of biographical information about her band. Who, you know, have you been burning to know this? You know, I haven't. You know, she could fire the guys next week for all I know. So.
She should fire a producer.
Well, that's another question. Yeah, it's that the issue is that artists are eventually, if they want to create real value in this additional area on the disk. Either fill it up with music and don't worry about the additional content, or else invest a little time in expanding your vision into this area, rather than allowing some multimedia producer to come in and say, okay, all you got to do is sit there and I'll interview you, and that'll be the additional content. That'll get you through one disc, but it won't get you through the second one.
Right. The Time Warner project, how will that work for the end user?
The interactive music aspect of the Time Warner full service network implementation will be identical to the PC and game machine and all the other implementations. What we do essentially with interactive music is we design a virtual machine, a machine that can be implemented on any platform. And since No World Order, we've redesigned everything to make it more user customizable and give people greater capabilities in how they can control the music, and also make it simpler in some ways. The first thing you see essentially is just buttons that allow you to reprogram the entire environment just with one push, rather than having to go and set up a whole bunch of different factors in the music. So the difference with the Warner full service network will be that since it's an online service, it's not online like the internet, it's online television. It's television on demand, and in this case, music on demand. The domain will be much larger than what we can fit on a CD or on a CD-ROM. We can put a couple albums worth of material perhaps on a CD-ROM. We can put, theoretically, the history of music on a giant server somewhere, and then people can start asking for musical combinations that cross stylistic lines and artistic lines and time lines. You can hear music made in the 30s juxtaposed next to music made in the 80s or 90s. And that, I think, is going to be, let us say, an epiphanal moment, when people discover that suddenly the domain of music becomes all flat and easily and equally accessible, instead of, let's say, like going to a record store, in which you can only locate things by the title of the album or the name of the artist. They don't keep track of the other aspects of it, like what is the subject matter of the lyrics, and what is the instrumentation here, and things like that, other aspects that you might be interested in. So even stylistic categories are very broad. Let's say the bossa nova, but within any particular category, people may be singing, about maybe singing just silly love songs, and they may be singing about social upheaval. They may be hardcore punk bossa nova, for all I know. But that would be a little bit too specific for a normal record store to categorize.
So the user can literally sit down and decide, I'm in this mood to hear this kind of music, and it programs music for them?
Essentially, that's what it's designed to do, is to go out and find music that matches your situation or your mood. All you have to do is gain the capability of describing it, essentially.
So how big will the database be when you begin?
In the beginning, it'll be relatively small, partly because the user base is small, and so there's no point in filling up it, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of assets with material that very few people will be accessing. But as the audience grows, the database will grow, and the first thing that will be there initially will be my entire catalog. The first complete works that we have there will be the complete works of Todd Rundgren, because I have control over those. And anyone else that we can manage to get to, to come on board with this will be there as well. There'll also be a good cross-section of probably, contemporary tunes that people are used to listening to, contemporary tunes and contemporary artists. And as long as we don't have to reprocess those, and as long as we don't charge anyone, like premium service time to listen to it, that's just the same as, putting music on the radio. But that also doesn't give you the advantages of, say, removing the vocals so that you can sing along yourself, or pulling out some of the instruments so that you can hear better what the vocals are doing, or perhaps hearing alternative takes that weren't on the original record. That then would be what you call a premium service, an experience that's not normally available.
Are we moving closer to the day where you won't need the record store?
I hope so. I know that record retailers will take great offense to this, but as an artist, there are so many layers between me and the audience. There's the record company and the distributors and of course radio stations and what they choose to play, and MTV and what they choose to play, and then at the end of that whole long line of middlemen is the record retailer and what they choose to put on the racks and what they choose to whose fancy display they put up in the store in order to attract it to the record. So for me, the idea of being online is simply the elimination of middlemen between me and the audience. And the record industry is like any other industry. They prefer the pipeline to be relatively narrow because it makes the market predictable. It helps them determine how much inventory they need and what kind of music people are responding to. Rather than having to do all kinds of music, they can, reduce it down to a few sort of popular categories. And the audience, therefore gets kind of, they get kind of evened out as well. Not everyone has exactly the same musical taste, but the end result is the same because your avenues for being exposed to new music are so narrow. The idea of things going online, and particularly if there are musical search engines, essentially that's what No World Order is a musical search engine, and search and retrieval and presentation. When that becomes more ubiquitous, then there's music that you may like, but I may not like, but neither of us have heard of, that you can suddenly find. Your favorite music in all the world is something that you've never heard before, and you've just never been able to get at it. And so the idea of music online in the long run is to shorten the path between you and music that is really sort of meant for you.
Couldn't be said better. You can get some shots, Ken.
Is there? Okay, I'll just ask.
Regarding the internet, things like that, secured transactions, the ability to send a credit card number to someone and get some goods from them and not have anyone else find the credit. If the economics are out of balance, if for instance people perceive that a record costs more than it's worth, that's when bootlegging can become a significant phenomenon. And another advantage of getting music online is that you don't have to buy the whole thing.
Buy it a la carte.
Yeah, it's like most people when they buy an album, they hone in on a couple of the tracks and stuff. I think that when that starts to happen, the economics of records will suddenly become a lot more attractive. There are things that fix the price of records now, like the price of pressing a piece of plastic, the price of paying independent promotion men and the whole distribution thing. All of those. There are some things that make it impossible to reduce the price. At the same time, if many of those kind of manufacturing steps were eliminated and you could deliver music into people's homes, the medium that it comes on, and therefore musicians can then price themselves competitively. They can start bidding against each other, for listeners' attention. It's the price of records, then they all will. And if one of them raises the price of records, well, it won't be long before they all do.
Do you have to be scared?